I want to say to many people, this video is going to come off as clinical and academic almost. It's going to be covering a number of tragedies, and at the end of the day, a lot of people lost their lives, and we want to be sure to be respectful about that situation. But I think it's also in the nature of human beings to want to work towards a more perfect society, work towards solving a problem, and that's kind of what we're here to do today. So even though I will come off as very cold and probably analytical to many people, I mean no disrespect for what has happened. And for those down in the comments, I'm just as guilty of this, making this video to it. But a lot of families have lost a lot of loved ones in the last weeks. So when, and I don't think this necessarily puts it off limits, but when we use their tragedy, their loss, as a vector for discussion to prevent or mitigate something like this happening in the future, let's understand the gravity of the situation. These aren't just faceless people. They're other human beings, other Americans that have had their lives ruined by this. So let's keep it low key, guys. Thanks. Hey, Brass Facts here. Another in my series about preparedness. Today is going to be a touchy subject, so buckle the fuck up. Mass shootings and preparing for them. All shootings suck, but some suck more than others, and this one really left a lot of people pissed off and has lit a collective fire under many people's asses. While recent tragedies were often solved by local LEOs stepping up to the line, some of these, when it was time to step up, were found wanting. This has cemented the fact and the reality that LEO, government, and more should now, as always, be viewed sort of a luxury, but not a guarantee. And the puck for your safety and others should always stop with you. That has been and will continue to be the message I try to kind of preach in these series of preparedness videos. Ultimately, it's your responsibility. So while America and Americans aren't immune to the typical outward finger-pointing and blaming and whatever, I think it's respectable that many people, while pissed, are looking inward and saying, if I was there, would I too have been found wanting? What do I need to do, and where does my preparedness fall short? What do I need to work on, and what could I have done to perhaps made a difference should I have been there? Could I have made a difference? Some people are all about themselves and their family, and it stops there. And sure, I get that. That actually makes sense. That is fine. You are not morally obligated to intervene in shootings. Not only that, but in a lot of cases, unless you are directly under fire, it's best to just clear out, avoid blue on blue, ending up as a victim yourself, or worse, hurting others in your desire to play hero. But in some cases, people will have their family involved, their kids involved, their loved ones involved, or maybe even a friend's loved one involved in these events. Or, I think a lot of people feel this way, if an event occurred where they have potentially could have assisted or resolved, but were found wanting mentally or gear-wise, they would struggle to live with their inactions for the rest of their days. And in that sense, intervention is non-negotiable. I'm part of a lot of communities, and a lot of communities are presently right now discussing, hey, I want to up my preparedness level to deal with these situations. This is what I've done. And my biggest gripe with these, not really with the people, I'm sure they're upset and they're just trying anything to avoid something like this occurring again or trying to mitigate something like this. But a lot of times the, hey, this is what I've done, involves a kit and a game plan that is centered around looking like some kind of 13 hours later loadout, go to war type thing, instead of a more practical, grounded setup. Right before getting into it, I'm trying my best to be respectful here. I am not any kind of expert. I, just like many, have thought about this a lot. I'm not going to be hyper-specific because that is out of my lane. I'm not a force-on-force instructor, nor have I been there, done that. I just want to bring some groundedness to a lot of these loadouts that we're seeing right now as people try to prep themselves for this scenario and perhaps offer a different perspective. So in preparing for something like this, what would we realistically need? Number one, concealed carry handgun, and more importantly, the skills and mindset to use said handgun. 95% of the time, if you end up in a situation where the bullet you fired is ultimately what will become the showstopper, it's because you were at the nucleus of the event. You don't have time to waddle out to your car and get your decked AR-15, don your body armor, and then get back in there. You need to jam. Right there, right now. This means you need a solid, consistent draw. You need to be fucking good with your pistol, and you need to be in your mindset and have the ability to switch it on and go. You're going to be in an environment with a ton of shoot-no-shoots, where every miss could potentially be an innocent person hit, and you could very easily do more damage than good. Part of this preparedness is you need to do a no-bullshit assessment about your handgun skills. Because if you do not have the ability to constantly stack, and I mean literally stack bullets at 7, 10, 15 yards even, on a chill, flat-range environment under time, and more importantly, you haven't trained no-fail type shooting, that is your ability to shoot with 100% confidence that it will be a hit, more importantly, understand when it will not be a hit, and thus, due to the circumstance, just yeeting the shot is an unacceptable risk and you need to relocate or whatever. If you have not had any of these mental discussions with yourself, you're probably going to be found wanting. We are talking about engaging someone that more than likely perhaps isn't engaging you, but has a rifle and a stocked weapon and is at distance, likely surrounded by friendlies. This is a vastly more demanding skill set than point-blank handgun shooting. Beyond the skill set, a lot of people are moving to stagger-stacked or single-stacked handguns, and I'm not saying ditch those, but understand your loss in performance over a double-stacked handgun, which are far easier to shoot typically, accurate, more faster, consistently. And mag size isn't actually the only determining factor in handgun choice. Now, you bring to the fight what you have on you, and if you can't consistently carry a G19 sized weapon, then that is what it is. But if that is you, you need to stop putting on your war belt every training session with your decked G19, and you need to start training on with what you actually have on you. Moving on, first aid. I think this goes without saying, but the reality is, you will likely arrive or be in a position where you will get there when it's over. But the emergency services are arriving or have arrived en masse, and there are countless stories of just 2 to 3 tourniquets and maybe a bandage from someone's blowout kit saving just as many lives. You don't need the lights out the scumbag to make a difference. Most people find they can realistically only carry a tourniquet on themselves. That's typically what I do in lieu of an extra pistol bag. However, perhaps take a look at your surrounding systems. Perhaps begin stashing blowout kits in different locations. You got a day bag, perhaps? Put some basic shit in there. You have a car. Well, having quick access to medical kit is not only great for this specific situation, but actually just a smart thing to have on you in general. Also, you need to sort of know how to use this stuff, right? Perhaps take a class. Depending on your area, it really depends on your area, but a lot of areas will have a basic level first aid course, but will also help you understand what to look for in certain scenarios. But more than that, likely a trauma course, a mass casualty course, and more. While these are typically LEO oriented, it's not like those skills cease to be relevant to a civilian, and many of these allow civilians to join in. It depends, you're going to have to call around. The most important aspect is to train at least to what you have. When I taught super basic first aid shit, I always found that no matter how good your presentation was, most people are not able to watch something, even if it's well explained and they understand and can recite it back to you, they are not going to be able to perform in the first live execution of the skill. They will do it, but they will forget some things, do it incorrectly, or just completely choke up. You then correct them, do the drill once or twice or even 3 times more, and then they get good at it. But the key takeaway is you gotta do it at least once, or twice, or 3 times. Number 3, more juice. At the end of the day, we don't know what we're up against. Today's shooting was mostly oriented around static locations. However, let's not forget what happened in the past. Sometimes there's going to be single actors. Sometimes there's going to be multiple actors. Sometimes there's going to be terroristic groups, and we've seen that are well equipped and willing to go all the way. It's sad, but in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen basically all manners of these things, not just in the US, but across the world. The first step to juicing up your current system is to stick with what you got. Okay, you got first aid on you and quick access to first aid, but maybe it's time to consider a large medical system, those not cheap ones. A bag with a lot of extra bandages, wrap, TQs, tape, gauze, and more for your car, for mass casualty events. For your usage, but also to assist those on site dealing with the mass casualty events. Even stuff like emergency blankets, water, and more are insanely useful, which, while sort of off topic, for shootings is useful for a number of other mass casualties events, and there's no reason why our preps can't be versatile in its nature. We don't know what's coming next. For other systems, I'm a big fan of having handgun mags stored throughout my systems. Extra mag under the driver's seat, indexed via a pouch that's glued into the seat. Extra mag in my first aid kit, so if I'm gonna go back to the car and grab something, well, I'm also grabbing an extra reload. Extra mags in my daily EDC bag, and more. Personally, for me, I think all of that is far more relevant than a rifle and a body armor system, and does a lot to increase your already existing capability against a well-armed adversary or adversaries. Especially if you're carrying a single stack 7-round, pistol, in which case, unless you're a god at shooting, you better have a reload on you. Alright, number 4, secondary firearm systems. A lot of people put this at the top of their priority list, and it's why I made this video, because to me, this is a afterthought. Something you do as a, alright, why not, instead of a priority. But yes, a rifle is absolutely superior to a pistol and far easier to use effectively. I would always want a rifle for these events. I also want a crow's nest on top of my house. It's about being realistic. My gripe is that a very, very small window exists where it makes sense to return to the car and grab the rifle, or to have a bag on me that can somehow carry a rifle and then use it in the moment. This topic has been beat to death on the internet, and most people are somewhat familiar or understanding of this premise. But the notion that you can realistically get to your car and then return to an active shooter event is low. And yes, while some of the recent ones, there would have actually been time to do that, and also order a Domino's pizza delivery for those standing around, statistically speaking, that is more than likely not the case. And we can't just prepare for one type of shooting event, we should prepare for all of them. I find that if you want to bring more oomph, and that is suspect in some ways, but if you do want to, it should be in the form of a smaller weapon, like a PDW style weapon, for example a Flux Raider or a TP9 or more. While these don't typically increase lethality over a handgun, they offer increased consistency, accuracy, the ability to come equipped with a suppressor, and all of this is very useful when you're utterly jacked up on adrenaline more than you've ever had in your life. For example, I bring this bag with me everywhere. It's got first aid in it, it's got prep stuff in it, but more importantly, it carries stuff in it that I want for my normal life. Phone charger, contact lens fluid, water, food, sometimes dog stuff, and more. The bag is actually mostly empty most of the time. Because, well, maybe I'm going to put my shopping stuff in here. Maybe I'm going to put an extra sweater in here. I don't know. It's a bag, so it needs to do bag things. Otherwise, I'm not going to bring a bag with me. Sometimes if space is acceptable, I can happen to throw a PDW style weapon in here. Note, I still have room for other stuff. Now, I'm not going to harp on this too much because I have a video right up here discussing this exact setup, and I actually plan on discussing it a little more in future videos, so go watch that if you're interested. But this goes back to point 1. Self-defense shootings are overwhelmingly going to be handled by a handgun, and if you find yourself on your shooting, your response time is in mere minutes, likely less. You get what you have on with you. And in that niche, you're going to have a handgun. And maybe a PDW like this stowed away in a bag. Anything beyond that is ridiculous, because no one, and I mean no one, is actually carrying an AR-15 in a discreet bag in their day-to-day life on them consistently. A slight extra factor. You can actually carry a PDW fairly concealed on your body if you have like a jacket or a sweater. And if you do end up in these situations and you do decide, fuck it, I went to my car, got my PDW, let me reapproach, well, you can actually do so now with a concealed weapon without just nailing the exact description that just got blasted on LEO comms. Male with big gun. Finally, I do actually sometimes have a rifle in the car. Generally for other reasons, but if by some cosmic chance I do end up in a situation where I could have used that rifle instead of what else I've had, sure, yeah, I'd do it. But I'm really trying to put on the pressure for people to realize having a rifle plus loadout in your car as the nucleus or center point of your defensive or offensive plan for these kinds of tragedies is a recipe for failure. If you have it as an option, sure, prep this thing at the expense of the other things I've mentioned above. Okay, that about covers what I wanted to talk about today. Please, let's keep this comment section chill and focus on the discussion of preparedness for this and other types of events, and less about the politics and what happened, because yeah, that's how this channel gets nuked. And it's also just unsavory. YouTube does not allow the nuance required to discuss something like this. Understand, realistically, for the vast majority of Americans, the good, smart call is to have a concealed carry weapon, and if you're not directly engaged, just egress the area. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't a story about you as the main character. You can very easily fuck things up if you haven't trained, prepared, and more, and even then, the margins are tight. Going in gung-ho mode will likely hurt you, hurt more people as you potentially muddle the flow of information, and in the minds of police get pegged as shooter number 2. There's something to be said about just being that citizen that picks up the phone, tells in a clear and concise manner, hey, there is one shooter, this is his description, multiple shots have been fired, this is where people are holding up, blah, and just staying put. However, for some people, you perhaps, in that moment, or if that day comes, decide, hey, I can and I am willing to do something right here, right now. Then do it.